Hi guys, this is Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalists. In this case, I'm going to be showing you the ESEE Junglas machete. That's the actual name, ESEE Junglas machete. It's not a typical machete by any means because it's a very thick blade in comparison to what you will find in a typical machete. I think it's a great knife in general, but maybe the machete definition isn't quite so. If you look at a real machete such as this one, this is an old machete of mine. I changed it a bit some time ago, made some modifications to it. It's much thinner. The blade is maybe 2 millimeters across tops, and I don't think it even gets to 2 millimeters. It's very thin, flexible. Of course, it's very light so as to not get tired. The thing is that a machete is mostly intended for cutting through softer vegetation, right? Now with a more heavy blade such as this one, such as the Junglas, you will find that it's easier to chop through harder vegetation like wood, and chopping through wood. It's going to be much of an easier task with this sort of blade than with a machete. I think it's an excellent knife. I knew it was great even before having one in my hand. The thing is, I was leaving Argentina and I didn't want to bring so much weight, so I waited a bit and waited until I was here in Ireland before buying it and having it shipped my way. A wonderful knife. I mean, I cannot emphasize enough how great it is, how much I like it. It does what it's supposed to do very well, and you can tell that just because of just doing some research on it. You know it's going to be a great knife even before you own one. If you know a thing or two about knives, you know that everything they were going for with this knife was done correctly, so the outcome can be expected to be just as great. It's a 10.5 blade, 10.5 inches long, and that I find it to be great for a big knife. Some people may think it's too much. I wouldn't agree with that. I think that a big knife such as this one definitely has a place, and it's capable of doing so much more than some of the smaller knives you see sometimes. Just trying not to spend too much time on that, I'm showing it quickly. These days, given all the bushcraft thing going on and how popular bushcrafting is, this is more of a typical blade you see sometimes in the bushcrafting magazines or woodcraft type of magazines, a small Scandi type of blade. This is great and it's very useful and very practical, and truth be told, in many of the different cultures that use big knives, they also have a smaller one as well. But what's often not mentioned is that even in the cultures where they use this type of small knives, the Scandinavian cultures, big knives were used as well and are still used as well and are very popular and cannot replace the kind of work done by the bigger blades with a smaller one. So in spite of being very popular, this sort of design, it's not the end all by any means. It's gonna be less capable than a bigger knife. That's not taking merit out of the practicality of these sort of blades. There's definitely a place for it. I have another one here. This one was made in Argentina by a blacksmith called Ogun. Gonna be showing that since we're already in it. Beautiful blade. It's all one steel. He left the hammered finish of the forge. Very nice. Beautiful. And practical as well, given its limitations. For a small knife, this is a great little knife. Somewhere there, that's the marking of Ogun. The two U shapes. Going back to the Junglas. Even if you like those kind of knives, you have to understand that there's just things that a knife such as this one will do that cannot be done with a smaller knife. Chopping through wood, chopping down small trees, it's definitely possible. Is it as good as a hatchet or a small axe? No, it's not. Is it as easy or is it as good for digging as if you have a small shovel? No, it's not. Is it gonna be as practical when cutting through a thicker branch or a little tree as if it would be if you had a saw? No, definitely not. Is it going to be as good as a real pry bar when using it for prying something open? No. But the thing is, it's capable of doing all that to some degree. So that's the nice thing about such a blade. It's, in my opinion, it's thick enough. Some people say that they would prefer something even thicker. This is 3/16 of an inch. It's big enough in my opinion. This is made of 1095 carbon steel. It's a good steel, a good option. I would have preferred maybe something, I'm pretty sure some people won't agree with this, but I would have preferred something like less carbon, maybe a 1070, 1055. 1055 is what's used in one of the blades on my all-time favorite knives, which I've recommended. And I don't do this often. I don't tell people, you know, just go right now, don't ask anything, just go and buy one. This is that knife, the cold steel Bowie machete, 12-inch Bowie machete. This is the knife that I told people maybe a couple years ago to just go buy 2, 3, or 4 or 10 of them. They were going for like 15 bucks a piece. This was a great value knife. This is one of the knives that could be costing 3, 4 times as much, and it would still be a great deal. At the price Cold Steel was selling it at a time, it was just a steal, and maybe the deal of the decade in terms of knives. Yeah, that's why I insisted so much on it. And well, now it's no longer in production. God knows why, but it's too bad. If you can still find one, it's still a great deal. These were made in China of all places, and right now Cold Steel has some other machetes. The Kukri machete is okay. The Kukri machete, the one I bought, was made in South Africa. The finish wasn't nearly as good as this one, but still good deals. This steel, this is 1055. 1055 is also 1055 or 1070 is also used by Tramontina with their machetes. What's the difference between 1055, 1070? 1095, which is the steel used in the Junglas, is a great steel. It has more carbon content than the 1070 or the 1055, of course. But what you get in exchange with when you have more carbon, it's easier to sharpen, and it holds that edge for a longer period of time and a longer amount of use. All right. The thing is, it becomes a bit more. The more carbon you have, it becomes more brittle as well. Of course, there's variations depending on the steel and the heat treatment as well, but usually that's what happens. I would have preferred a bit more toughness and more flexibility and abuse resistance, having less carbon on the blade. But it's still good. Still, it's a good option, especially because ESEE does. Well, actually, the knife is made by Rowan, I believe. They do a good job in their heat treatment as well. So this is the kind of blade that you can hammer with it. You can pry within understanding that it may be breaking on you, but it's going to be taking a huge amount of abuse, not only because of the steel and the heat treatment, but also because of the geometry of the blade. Look at the amount of real estate that you have here. You have a good amount of you have a good chunk of steel, and that gives you more toughness than in comparison with a smaller blade. When you have a smaller blade such as this one, when I was showing you guys before, it's even more important to have a good steel because you have less of it. So when you have less steel, if you have and this blade is still pretty wide. If you have even a smaller blade, the quality of the steel is even more important because it's going to be more of a factor in resisting the amount of abuse. With a machete or with a big knife such as this one, you have so much of it, you have so much material that you can get away with lots of things, such as prying within reason. There's all knives break. If you push them hard enough, if you do crazy enough stuff with them, you're going to be breaking it. That's a given. But you can do a lot of abuse with this sort of knife and get away with it. The handle is pretty ergonomic. It is more of a typical machete handle, which is good. It is made of canvas micarta, and it's very comfortable to touch. The only thing is that it's gonna be getting dirty easier, and you may be thinking, okay, that's not a big deal. It's a knife I'm gonna be using, so it's of course gonna be getting dirty. The thing is, you don't want something that is porous and keeps dirt and germs and potential problems such as diseases in your grip. You want something that is easier to clean, at least in my opinion. I understand that it's very resistant to abuse, it's very rugged and also comfortable to touch, but it's gonna be catching dirt and germs and things you don't want in your handle much more easily than if it was something such as polished wood or plastic. Still good job. This is something that's more of a case when you're using your knife also for preparing food, cutting food. You want to keep that in mind so as to wash your hands more often and understand that this is a place where those sort of things are going to be catching. Same thing for the finish of the blade. It has this powder coated textured finish which looks good. It does protect the blade from rusting rather well. You still have these laser markings that are going to be rusting on you rather fast if you don't do something about it. So I suggest putting a nice layer of oil so as to keep that protected and keep an eye on it. But since it's all textured, it catches dirt and little pieces of dirt, mud, and that sort of thing much more easily. If it had been a polished blade, it's much easier to keep it clean especially when it's something that's going to be used for processing, cutting, and preparing food. Beautiful blade. All in all, it's outstanding. This blade costs about $150, give or take, and I still haven't talked about the sheath, which it deserves a review on its own because it's by far the best sheath I've found so far. And if you think about it, you're paying about $150 with including a sheath that will cost you no less than $50 if you buy it on its own. So you're basically paying like $100 for the knife, which is a great deal, no doubt. Would have been a better finish, mirror polish finish. Would that been good? I would have preferred a polished mirror finish, but I know a thing or two about knives and I know how to take care of it. I think that for the average guy, he would have a problem with rust soon enough, since 1095 will rust pretty fast. Maybe some sort of Teflon type of finish, something that is easier to keep clean. Besides the problem of keeping the blade clean with a rugged textured finish, it's also a matter of how easily or not does it slide through the material you're cutting through. When you have this sort of textured surface, it's going to be catching more and it's going to be sliding a bit less easily than if you have something that is that has less friction on it. Give or take 6 inches worth of a grip, good enough for medium and large hands. I find it to be very comfortable. This is a knife that you cannot avoid comparing it to another knife that is very similar, one of my all-time favorite knives, which is the ESEE Bushwhacker Mistress. It's right here. You've seen it on a previous video I just did showing this knife. I use it for preparing camp when I was out and about with Jay. It's in one of the previous videos. It is strikingly similar to the ESEE Junglas. The ESEE Junglas is supposed to have been designed by ESEE for the Junglas team, which is an anti-drug team in Colombia. Look at those two blades, very similar. Pretty much similar, same size of blades, pretty much same geometry. You have canvas micarta on both of these knives. The one in the ESEE, it's a bit more shaped. It seems to be more ergonomic. I find it to be a bit too small for my hands. I don't have huge paws or anything, just medium, maybe medium to large hands. And I find it to be a bit too small. My wife, she tried it out. I asked her to do so, and she told me that she found this handle to be more comfortable than this other one. So for small hands, the shape of the grip of the ESEE is better. For medium or large hands, the more typical machete handle is better in the Junglas. Again, notice what I've mentioned about what I talked about before. You see how it catches the textured type of finish, similar to the one in the Junglas, how it catches dirt more easily. If you're using this for cutting food, there's a good chance of you getting food poisoning because of a dirty blade. That's something you'd like to avoid if possible. It's not fun to get to get food poisoning. So just keep that in mind. If you're using it for preparing food, keep in mind that it has to be pretty clean, and it's going to be more of a job with this. You have the flat pommel for using it as a hammer. I'd probably use the spine of the blade as a hammer, which would give you more momentum. Very well detailed job in the tip. Very nicely done. Performed very well. Could even use it for cutting a bit carefully and, you know, removing splinters, or do very detailed work with this tip. Razor sharp as it comes out of the box, which is something that, if I'm comparing it to the ESEE, it's not. It didn't. At least this one didn't come razor sharp out of the box. I had to do some work of my own. And in the ESEE Junglas, razor sharp just as it came. Great job in that regard. Instead of having these rivets in the as you have in the Bushwhacker Mistress, you have Allen screws. This makes it easier for if you want to exchange the grip for something else, adding wooden grip or something different, as I suggested. Maybe that's a possibility, and much easier done with this knife. The grin, it has it's not full flat ground. It is just a saber ground. As you see that it's flat on this side, almost all the way to the top, but not just quite so. This allows you, it gives you two advantages. First, it gives you more toughness in the blade, gives you more a greater surface in the cross section, so it makes for a tougher blade because of that almost saber grind it has. And it's also easier for using certain sharpening tools that need to be clamped to the blade. You need to have flat surfaces on both sides so as to use those certain tools. So all in all, great knife. If I'm comparing it to the ESEE again, which is something that pretty much unavoidable given that both are very similar, I'd say that, well, of course you have a better steel in the ESEE. You have infused steel, which is probably the best steel there is these days. What about the high carbon content of the 1095? You know, something that I've seen before many times is that the survival knife has to be a carbon knife, high carbon knife. Knives that aren't hard carbon blades don't have high carbon steel, are crap, and you know, that's something that may have been true 20 years ago, give or take. Today, given the technology that is available, you have some excellent knives that don't have some excellent steel, that don't have that much carbon in it. For example, the infused steel, which is the best steel money can buy in terms of knives, it has 0.5% of carbon only. It has lots of nitrogen so as to compensate, but it's not a carbon steel knife. It's not a carbon steel per se. It is, though, extremely stain resistant, so it's pretty much a stainless steel. So, you know, that thing that they sometimes say about knives having to be carbon steel only, that's just not true. Just a bit of information for you to keep in mind as well. Let's move on and take a look at the sheath. One more thing, it's a blade that not only fits nicely in the hand because of the well done job with the grip, it's also well balanced, because you have the center of, you know, that's where it's the center of gravity of the blade. Very nice. And because of that, because of it being pretty low and pretty close to the finger guard, it's very easy for slashing. It's not that blade heavy, so it is a nice thing. It's gonna be tiring you less and still doing a proper job. You would have more chopping power if it was more blade heavy, but you get tired easier if you're cutting through something that isn't, you know, if you're cutting through softer vegetation. The sheath is great. Just because of this, the knife deserves its own. The sheath deserves its own review. Really, it's Kydex sheath. You have a draining hole over here so that water slips right through it. Have several holes for adding a bunch of different stuff. It's molded close to the top for a nice snug fitting, and it's fully adaptable as well. Let's just put it in it. The only thing is, as you see here, when you slide it, this side sticks a bit up and you may be cutting it, so it would have been better to have a bit of bungee cord pulling it down. That would have been a neat addition. Fits perfectly nice, and it's not going anywhere even when not fully tight. You can actually tighten or loosen how snugly it fits with this screw. There it would be harder to remove it. There it's a bit softer. This is good enough in my opinion. It's not going to be going anywhere, especially if it's hanging on your side. You have MOLLE on the back as well, fully adjustable, and this sheath is customizable so as to make it for left or right handed. You can unscrew it, put it on the other side, same with these screws over here, so it all works very nice. You can also loop any sort of belt through it using this system. The sheath is great. It has the piece here that it loops open. This would be good enough, at least in my opinion. This is as good as it gets. You have the option of covering the pommel a bit, but I think this is overkill. I don't think this is important unless you're jumping off an airplane or something like that. I'm probably not going to be needing this, but it's just nice to know that you have it. It's a very functional sheath, has lots of different options. And for 150 bucks, guys, what can I say? It's basically impossible to beat such a great knife for such a price. You can find more expensive knives. The ESEE is definitely more expensive. It costs like 600 bucks, and I mean, it's the kind of thing you go for when you want the best of the best, especially because of the steel, because of ESEE steel, which is probably the best steel money can buy these days. Now, is it that much of a difference? Is it that much more? Is it outperforming the knife as it is in comparison to the Junglas enough so as to make for the difference of money? No, not by any means, especially when considering the price that you can buy 2 or 3 of the other ones, 2 or 3 of these ones before even approaching what you pay for a ESEE. The Junglas beats it, in my opinion. Unless you want the best of the best, and even you have to think that this knife, the ESEE Bushwhacker Mistress, when you find someone that bought one and is willing to sell it to you, it usually comes without a sheath. So you also have to add that to, you know, so as to take into account all the expenses you need. Very nice blade, very nice knife. I rarely tell people, you know, if you want something, I rarely tell people to buy something as right away or as strongly suggested it. But in this case, I can only do that. I can only tell people that if you're looking for a great knife, maybe one of the best knives there is out there these days, just go for it. Just go for the ESEE Junglas machete. Beautiful, beautiful, functional. There's nothing you couldn't like about this knife. Guys, hope you like this little review. I'm gonna be doing another video talking about big knives because I think it's a nice topic to talk about and mention why is it that's important. So that's probably gonna be my next video. I hope you enjoyed this little video. If you like it and you're looking forward to more stuff, consider subscribing as well. Hope you enjoyed it, and see you in our next video. Bye.